That is because Allah would not change a favor which He had bestowed upon a people until they change what is within themselves. And indeed, Allah is hearing and knowing. How is this not injustice? That these people were living such comfortable lives. They had so much. But then what happened? They came fighting against Rasulullah ﷺ, and their blessings were taken away. Their comfort was turned into torture. Why? Why was this done? Because Allah does not take a favor away from a person. He does not take the blessings away from a person until he does something himself, which becomes a cause of being deprived of those blessings. And this is something very important to understand. Blessings are only taken away when we have done something to prove ourselves unworthy. When we have done something to prove ourselves unworthy. When Allah gives a blessing to someone, then He only takes it away from him because of some sin that he has committed, because of some wrong that he has committed, because of the ingratitude that he has shown. So what do we learn from this? That a blessing that Allah has given remains with a person as long as he is grateful, or until a certain amount of time. But then when he does kufr, when he shows ingratitude, when he disbelieves, when he sins, when he disobeys Allah, then what happens? That blessing is snatched away from him. It is taken away from him. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. In a hadith we learn that once the Prophet ﷺ, before him, a man was eating with his left hand. He was eating with his left hand. So the Prophet ﷺ told him, eat with your right hand. He said, no, I cannot. I won't. He refused. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, may you never be able to do that. Meaning, may you never be able to eat with your right hand. And so it happened. That man was never able to lift his right hand up to his mouth after that day. Allah gave him the blessing of the right hand. Even if it hurt a little bit, if the Prophet ﷺ is telling him that eat with your right hand, what should he have done? At least tried. This is what we have to do. At least try. We don't even try, and we say, no, this is something that's beyond me. This is something that I cannot do. And we refuse outright. So then what happens? That very blessing is then taken away from a person. And in that is not the fault of Allah. Whose fault is it? Our fault. So whenever we see that a blessing has been taken away from us, that all of a sudden, something that we enjoyed has been taken away from us. What happened? What went wrong? We need to analyze ourselves. We need to ask Allah for forgiveness. We need to show gratitude for what we still have. And we need to think about our actions. Theirs is like the custom of the people of Fir'aun and those before them. They denied the signs of their Lord, so we destroyed them for their sins. And we drowned the people of Fir'aun, and all of them were wrongdoers. Indeed, the worst of living creatures in the sight of Allah are those who have disbelieved, and they will not ever believe. Meaning when the truth came before them, they still did not believe. The ones with whom you made a treaty, but then they break their pledge every time, and they do not fear Allah. So if you, O Prophet, gain dominance over them in war, then disperse by means of them those behind them, that perhaps they too will be reminded. Meaning, when there is a group of people who recognize the truth, yet they reject it, and then you make a treaty of peace with them, but then they violate that, not just once, but many times, then what should you do? What should you do? Do not be deceived by them. If these people come fighting against you, then you also fight them back and teach them a lesson. Be severe with them. Why? So that they learn, and those behind them also who are thinking of being treacherous with you, they also learn. That cheating Muslims, betraying them, being treacherous with them is not a game. This is something serious. This is just like a teacher in a classroom. What does she do? Certain things she tolerates. But then certain actions she does not tolerate. Why? In order to teach a lesson to the whole class. In the house also, what happens? Parents, they tolerate certain bad behaviors, but then there's some other bad behaviors that are not acceptable at all. Why? So that the other children will learn that we cannot do this. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَذَّكَّرُونَ. And if you have reason to fear from a people betrayal, then throw their treaty back to them, putting you on equal terms. Indeed, Allah does not like the traitors. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْخَائِنِينَ. Meaning, if you sense that some people are going to be treacherous with you, then what should you do? Openly break the treaty with them. You should not be treacherous with them in return. You understand? That if someone is being treacherous with you, you do not show treachery in return. What do? You abolish the contract or whatever understanding that was there between you and them. How? Openly. You declare that now there's no treaty between us and you. Openly, you say that this contract is no longer valid. Why? Because if you cheat them in return, then what's the difference between you and them? What's the difference between you and them? So, what do we see here? That إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْخَائِنِينَ. Allah does not like the traitors, those who cheat. And this is a very important thing that we need to learn. Who is it that Allah loves? Allah loves people who are honest and trustworthy. And people who betray, Allah does not like them. In a hadith we learn, the Prophet ﷺ said, that if you have 4 qualities in you, then whatever you lose of this world won't ever harm you. If you possess 4 qualities, then no matter what you suffer in this life, it won't harm you. It's not a loss, because you have these 4 qualities. And because of these 4 qualities, what will happen? Whatever loss you have incurred, Allah will give you something else better in place of it. What are those qualities? حِفْظُ الْأَمَانَةِ, guarding trusts. And وَصِدْقُ الْحَدِيثِ, being truthful in one's speech. حُسْنُ خَلِيقَةٍ, being good in one's manners, in one's etiquette. And fourthly, عِفَّةٌ فِي طَعَامٍ, meaning consuming halal rizq. Being careful with respect to the food that a person is acquiring, the money that a person is making. And in that, being able to leave what is unlawful. Being able to abstain from what is not yours. So if a person has these 4 qualities, Rasulullah ﷺ said, that then you don't need to fear any loss. And one of them is what? One of them is حِفْظُ الْأَمَانَةِ, guarding trusts. That if you possess this quality, then you are successful. And we see that the reason why Allah does not like kha'ineen is because amana and khiyana, they're not the same at all. They're not the same at all. They're 2 different ways of life. You see, khiyana, it cannot be with amana in the same heart. The Prophet ﷺ said, Iman and kufr cannot be together in one heart. Truthfulness and lying cannot be together. And khiyana and amana cannot be together. They cannot be together. They're 2 completely different ways of life. So, the person who values Allah's love, what will he do? He will leave khiyana. And he will fulfill his obligations, fulfill his duties. He will not leave his task until he has completed it. Until he has done what he was asked to do. He will not leave it unattended. He will not leave it unfinished. No, he will do his work. وَلَا يَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا سَبَقُوا إِنَّهُمْ لَا يُعْجِزُونَ. And let not those who disbelieve think that they will escape. Indeed, they will not cause failure to Allah. They will be overcome. And then the Muslims are taught a very important matter. That prepare against them, meaning against the enemy, whatever you are able of power and of steeds of war. The Muslims, the believers, are instructed to keep ready. Keep ready for what? For battle in future. And remember, this was after the battle of Badr, which was the first battle, which meant that many more would happen later on. And that was true. Many more battles came afterwards. But what we learn from this is that we should be proactive. That when a challenge is coming, when there's a threat that is real, then be ready, be prepared from before. Don't scramble around at the last moment. Be ready, be prepared from before. Now for Ramadan, just a few days are left. A couple days are left. Make a meal plan. Think what you're going to eat. when you're going to eat, when you're going to be doing your groceries. Make a plan. Decide from before. Because if you don't do it, what's going to happen? Half an hour before iftar, when you should be sitting and making dua, you will be scrambling in the kitchen trying to put some food together. At sahur time, when you should be doing istighfar, you'll be running around trying to prepare your food so that you can eat it. So what do we learn? Be ready, be prepared from before. When something is coming and there's no avoiding it, you have to deal with it. There's no avoiding it, then accept it. Accept it and prepare for it from before. Now later on, whether it happens or not, that's a different story. That's a different story. Just like, when the weekend comes in, then do you make sure that your house is clean? Why? Because what if somebody comes? Now whether or not somebody comes, that's a different story. But at least your house is clean. So that as the guests are coming in, as somebody comes up, you're not running around to put the shoes away and put the jackets away and clean up the kitchen and tidy up the mess. What do you want to do at that time? Receive your guest. Right? So people who are successful in life are those who are proactive, who are ready and prepared from before. So be ready from before. And why should you be ready from before? Especially for battle? Because then, with this preparation, you will terrify the enemy of Allah, and also your enemy, and others besides them who you do not know, but whom Allah only knows. And whatever you spend in the cause of Allah will be fully repaid to you, and you will not be wronged. So spending in the cause of Allah is the best form of charity. And remember, this is something that Allah calls qard hasana. This is a beautiful loan that a person gives to Allah, meaning Allah will definitely return that to him. So in preparation for something for the cause of Allah, when you have to spend some time, spend some money, then remember this is an investment. This is not a waste. And if they incline to peace, meaning if the enemy inclines to peace, then what should you do? Insist on fighting? Just because you're ready for it? No. Then you should also incline to it. Meaning avoid war. Avoid war. But be ready. Be ready. And this shows that in Seerah also, any battle that the Prophet ﷺ participated in, it was not because the Muslims loved bloodshed or they wanted to kill the enemy. The purpose was what? To maintain their own security. The purpose was to maintain their own security because Muslim blood had become very cheap. We learned that at the time when the Prophet ﷺ went to perform Umrah, and the mushrikeen of Makkah did not let the Muslims in. They were raising their weapons to fight the Muslims. What happened? The Prophet ﷺ, he said that this war has consumed the Quraysh. It has consumed them, meaning they have become addicted to it. It's as if they cannot think of any other option but war. Because the Muslims had come in the state of ihram, not with weapons, but with their sacrificial animals. So we see that the objective, the purpose of Muslims is not just to fight for the cause of fighting, for the purpose of fighting, for the sake of fighting. The purpose is much greater. War is just a means. So if you can get those means, if you can reach that destination of peace and security through something other than war, then accept it. You don't have to always fight. You don't always have to argue. You don't always have to cause bloodshed. وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ, and rely upon Allah. So beautiful. Because when you have some strength, you want to show it. And if you don't show it, you feel that the other is going to take advantage of that. Right? Like for example, you have the strength and you can yell at someone. You can tell them off. But if they are apologizing, then accept that apology. You don't have to punish them. But what do we think? No, I have to punish him. I have to punish her. Because if I don't, then they will misuse me. Right? So what does Allah say? Tawakkal ala Allah. Rely upon Allah. Indeed, it is He who is the hearing and the knowing. But if they